Hey friends, welcome back to our channel where stories come to life. Today we're diving into a tale about a little ant who dared to dream big despite being impossibly small. Join us as we explore the heartwarming story of Annie and the invaluable lesson she shared with the entire ant colony. As the sun peeked over the horizon, bathing the forest floor in golden light, the bustling activity of the ant colony beneath the old oak tree began to stir. Thousands of ants, each with their designated task, started their day. Among them was Annie, the tiniest ant anyone had ever seen. While her sisters could effortlessly carry crumbs twice their size, Annie struggled to manage a single grain of sugar. While others created impressive tunnels and structures, Annie's contributions looked like tiny scratches on the surface. Every morning, Annie watched the other ants marching out in perfect lines to gather food, build, and work. She yearned to join them, but her tiny steps couldn't keep up with the rest. "Don't worry about it," Annie said her sister, Clara, one day as they prepared for another foraging expedition. "We've got everything covered. Just stay here and rest." But Annie didn't want to rest. She wanted to help. She wanted to matter. As the days passed, Annie continued watching the other ants from the entrance of the colony. One day, while everyone was busy with their big, important tasks, Annie noticed something they had missed. A tiny crack in the colony's main food storage room was letting in a single drop of water. "It's just one little drop," thought Annie. "I should tell someone important." But all the important ants were busy with their big, important tasks. The drop seemed so small, and Annie felt even smaller. "Maybe I can fix it myself," Annie decided. She found the tiniest pebble she could carry and tried to plug the crack. It wasn't a perfect fix, but the dripping stopped. There, Annie said to herself, "I did something." Days turned into weeks, and Annie continued finding tiny things that needed attention around the colony. She picked up tiny crumbs that others walked over, smoothed out small bumps in the tunnels, moved little pebbles that might trip someone, and even whispered good morning to ants who looked sad. Her sister Clara would say, "Annie, you don't need to do these tiny things. We have teams for the important work." But Annie kept doing her small acts anyway. Something inside her said they mattered. Then one night, a terrible storm hit the forest. Rain poured down like never before, and the wind shook the great oak tree. By morning, the colony was in chaos. Water had flooded through dozens of tiny cracks in the walls, destroying food supplies and making many tunnels unsafe. "How did this happen?" asked the colony chief. "Our main walls were strong." The engineering ants examined everything. They found that the flood had started from one small crack that had been growing for weeks, spreading to other tiny cracks, creating a network of weakness throughout their home. "If someone had fixed that first tiny crack," said the chief engineer, "none of this would have happened." At that moment, Annie's heart sank. She remembered the little crack and her tiny pebble fix. She had caused this disaster with her small, inadequate repair. Trembling, Annie approached the chief. "It's my fault," she whispered. "I found a tiny crack. I tried to fix it with a small pebble, but I guess I made things worse." The colony went silent. All eyes turned to the tiny ant. But then the chief engineer said something unexpected. "You found the crack? You tried to fix it?" "Yes," Annie said, her voice barely audible. "But I only had a tiny pebble, and I thought it was too small to matter." The chief engineer smiled and knelt down to her level. "Annie, do you know what our biggest problem has been? We focus only on big solutions to big problems. But you're the only ant who notices the small problems before they become big ones." The other ants murmured in agreement. No one had realized the significance of Annie's small actions until the disaster struck. "Every big disaster starts with something tiny," the chief continued. "And you're the only ant who sees the small cracks, the little problems, the tiny issues that we miss." "But I'm too small to fix big things," Annie protested. The chief placed a hand on her shoulder. "That's exactly why we need you. You're small enough to see what we can't see, to reach places we can't reach, to notice things we overlook. You are not too small. You are perfectly sized to do the most important job in our colony." From that day forward, Annie became the colony's small things inspector. Her job was to find and fix tiny problems before they became big ones. She discovered loose pebbles before they became rock slides, small holes before they became tunnels for enemies, tiny mold spots before they spoiled food supplies, and little arguments before they became big fights. But Annie's greatest discovery was that her small acts of kindness, her good mornings, her tiny helpfulness, her gentle care, were creating something beautiful throughout the colony. The ants started noticing these changes, too. As weeks turned into months, the once chaotic and inefficient colony became the most harmonious and well-functioning ant colony anyone had ever seen. One day, a visitor from another colony arrived. He was there to learn about their legendary efficiency and happiness. "How did you achieve this?" he asked the chief. "Your colony is the most harmonious and well-functioning I've ever seen." The chief smiled and pointed to Annie, who was carefully checking a tiny crack and whistling softly to herself. "We learned that the smallest acts create the biggest changes," he said. "That little ant taught us that nothing is too small to matter, and no one is too small to make a difference." The visitor watched as Annie finished her inspection and smiled at a young ant carrying a heavy load. The young ant smiled back, then helped another ant who had dropped her burden. That ant then shared her lunch with someone who looked hungry. "It's like ripples in a pond," the visitor marveled. "One small kindness creates another, then another." As the sun set, casting long shadows across the forest floor, Annie sat with a group of young ants who felt too small and unimportant to contribute. "Remember," Annie told them, "every big change starts with something tiny. Every great forest starts with a single seed. Every long journey starts with a single step. Every strong colony starts with one ant who cares." "But what if our contributions seem too small?" asked a young ant. Annie smiled. There's no such thing as too small when it comes from your heart. The smallest act of kindness, the tiniest moment of care, the littlest effort to help. These are the things that change the world. And so Annie learned that being small wasn't a limitation. It was her superpower. She could see what others missed, reach where others couldn't go, and care about things others overlooked. In the colony's Hall of Heroes, there's now a tiny plaque that reads, "To Annie, who taught us that no act of kindness is ever too small, and no individual is ever too tiny to change everything." And that's our story for today, friends. What did you think? Did you enjoy this tale of courage, kindness, and believing in yourself? If you did, don't forget to show your support. Your likes motivate us to keep bringing amazing stories to life. Also, share your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. What did you like best about Annie's story? What lessons do you think we can all learn from her? We'd love to hear all about it. Before we go, remember the valuable lesson Annie shared with us all. Every small act matters. Every tiny bit of kindness creates ripples that spread far and wide. So just like Annie, pay attention to the small things, offer kindness whenever you can, and believe in the power of your actions. You never know how much of a difference you might make in the world. That's it for today, adventurers. Keep being awesome, keep believing in the magic, and always remember, the smallest ant can have the biggest heart. Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming. And most importantly, keep being you.